What was great advice 20 years ago, but definitely isn't now? To look after your phone battery, you should let it go all the way down to 0% and then charge fully to 100%. This is a good one. My 23-year-old nephew thought this was the way to go even now, because his mum had told him. Was visibly surprised when I told him modern batteries were better served by not letting them drop below 15%. Edit. Wow. Thanks for awards. My first. So many questions that I'm not qualified to answer, but so many knowledgeable Redditors have provided great info below. I'll try my best to summarize in response. Almost whatever you do, your battery will perform for about 2 years on a single charge a day. But if you want to get to 4 to 5 years plus on a single charge a day, maintaining 20 to 80% battery is the sweet spot. Overcharging is as damaging as letting the battery run flat. Nearly all new phones have a setting to protect overcharging. On my Galaxy Note 10, Android S/12, it's called Protect Battery and will cap charging at 85%. On Android, open Settings, the cog icon, and use Search for Protect. Samsung specifically tells you this setting is to extend battery life. What your battery power display shows isn't necessarily the true state of power. However, the display is what you should work to. That's what manufacturers want you to observe. I don't know enough about the chemistry/manufacturer to answer other detailed questions, but there are a considerable number of expert insights in the convos below. Is that really true? If so, why? And related, my Samsung phone has a setting where you can set it to never charge to be above 85% to prolong battery life. Lithium-ion chemistries in use in electronics show less degradation when not charged and discharged to the extremes, 0% to 100%. Best to try and stick to the -20% to -80% for battery longevity. I'm glad the Samsung phones have that setting, though I wish they would let us manually adjust the setting too. Isn't 100% on most phones 80 to 85% in the first place? Usually if the charging controller is good and calibrated. Nowadays my phone is smarter than I am, so I just plug the thing in and it'll make sure not to burn out its own battery. Heck yeah, I've also noticed my new phone has adaptive charging for just this case when charging overnight. Sets it to only hit 100 right before my alarm goes off, rather than hitting full in an hour and fluctuating all night. WTF is this black magic? What kind of phone do you have? Edit. Okay guys, I get it, I'm technologically inept. Stop posting your phones. Google Pixel phones have this. I believe it is because we changed from nickel-cadmium batteries to lithium batteries. Nickel batteries were subject to something called memory effect, but lithium batteries are not. https://www.techtarget.com/what/definition/battery memory effect. This is also not true. Lithium batteries, except LFP, not used in phones, can go down all the way to down 3.0 volts, sometimes even as low as 2.7 volts. But phones would cut off the power at 3.5 volts. It is done partly to keep power to the BMS, the tiny electronic controller circuit next to the battery, in case the battery would be left uncharged for a long time. Another reason is, it's just easier to design electronics with a narrower voltage range, 3.5 volts to 4.4 volts, as opposed to broader range, 3.0 volts to 4.4 volts. What you need to avoid is high voltages, 80% and above, as most electric cars do by default since their batteries are expected to last 10 years or more. GM specifically sets their batteries to stop charging at 4.05 volts, which is roughly 80%. But Tesla, Elon Musk, set up to 90% is fine either way, avoid high percentage. Source, https://akabattery.zendesk.com/hc/na/article/212988989 Re-Battery University article BU 808, thanks to you/waypaste IOL, as already seen in Choi 2002, the end of discharge voltage or level has zero effect on wear. Don't charge before you run out of power, it's fine to let it drop to zero. Finally, somebody who knows 20 years ago was not before cell phones and email lol. I had someone tell me on Reddit that nanny cams did not exist 20 years ago, and I got downvoted for questioning him. Extra ridiculous because everyone thinks 20 years ago is the 80s, but I'm pretty sure nanny cams existed even then lol. Just way less subtle. 20 years ago was still after the 9/11 attacks now. That really gets to people. I was just in the car with my dad and I was listening to a song from MCR's first album, And he said I don't get music these days, and I had to say, Dad, this song is old enough to have voted in 2020. Edit, it was this song. I think this came from NiCad batteries, like the early ones for RC. They were prone to developing a memory, meaning if you didn't drain them completely before charging, they would not discharge past that point. Over time the capacity would shrink due to this. Modern batteries like Li-ion, Li-Po, RC World, don't have this issue and are better served by not being completely discharged as mentioned ITT. I remember when my dad told me as a teenager to never be the one to pursue a guy, because I'm a woman. Maybe that was to keep me safe in my youth, but I've since come to realize that most of the dudes who are worth being with are either shy or oblivious, and I have no choice but to make the first move. I was both shy and oblivious. One night an acquaintance of mine asked me out. I had no clue she was interested in me, although it seemed obvious after the fact. I married her 2 weeks ago. You do a lot in 3 weeks. Efficiency is key. In middle school, I went to a dance with a girl, and she kissed me. I thought to myself, I wish I could kiss her again, but I don't know if she'll like that. In high school there was this girl in this gate/tag class or whatever you want to call it. It was essentially just study hall but with bean bags and futons and minimal supervision. We would play flirt all the time. It was like real flirting but ironic because it was overt, and who would want to flirt with me, right? She'd come sit on my lap or lay across me and I'd mess with her hair. All hilarious stuff. One day I was sitting there playing some World of Warcraft like a real G do, and she came up behind me and wrapped her arms around me and leaned down next to me. I thought, up to our good old shenanigans I see. I'll play along after this Arathi basin is over. Then she kissed me. I completely froze up. As far as I can recall, there was literally nothing going on in my head. I was totally confused. That seemed to go beyond our limits of play flirting and didn't make any sense. Me sitting there with my hands on my keyboard and mouse while World of Warcraft was on, completely unresponsive to her working up the courage to kiss me, was apparently a red flag to her. She was embarrassed, said "Uck," and walked to the other room. I sat there while my brain finished rebooting, and then I tried to figure out how to have more of that. I walked into the other room with a sick one-liner. I said hey. Every girl in that room glared at me, and we didn't do play flirting anymore, edit for clarity, because we didn't talk after that, not because I somehow ascended beyond play flirting through this fuck up. F's in the chat for this tragic L. So was she interested in you? You can never be too sure. I think so. We bought a house together and got married. But she could just be being polite. It is possible. Is she Canadian? I'm going to admit I'm absolutely terrible at distinguishing if a woman is just being friendly with me or is actually into me, and I think it's the same for a lot of guys. I generally assume a woman is just being friendly, as I'd rather be wrong about that than potentially creep a woman out who's only being nice. So I really appreciate when women make the first move. https://news.ku.edu/2014/06/03/ Hard-to-detect study finds people are less than 50% accurate when guessing that someone is flirting. So you're saying that I should reverse my guesses to get greater than 50% accuracy. At an interview, manager, all right, if you don't have any more questions for me, I think we're done here. We'll give you a call in the next few days to let you know if you got the position. You, suddenly bashful, are you flirting with me? Also, lack of self-esteem. I almost never approach women because I automatically assume they won't be interested in me, so I don't want to bother them. A friend of mine jokes he needs a woman to throw a brick at him to get he's being flirted with. He made this joke so many times a friend of his actually made him a flirting brick. It's soft, I think it's essentially like a large stress ball, but brick-shaped. So he puts it on display in his booth at the fair where he works on weekends and explains to all the friends who ask what the brick is for. One female friend asks, so if I want to hit on you, and I want you to know it, I hit you with this brick. Is that right? Yes. She hits him with the brick. At which point my friend does something we all should have seen coming. He sighs, puts the brick back, and says, I really need a sign or something to explain it's not just a joking around thing. You're like the third woman to do that today. As a shy and oblivious guy who years later finds out he had interest from women he liked, I feel seen. All guys are oblivious. I feel like us guys fall into one of two categories, oblivious or completely shameless. You need to memorize this cause you won't have the info accessible later. The most important skill isn't knowing the right answer, it's knowing how to find out the right answer. And that's gotten much easier. With how easy it is to find the right answer these days, I propose that it's much more important to be able to identify the wrong answer. That's actually a great point. So much misinformation out there. If we come full circle, I would propose that it is much harder to find out the right answer, because now you have to wade through a pile of wrong answers first, from increasingly authoritative sounding sources, and sources which claim they have waded through the pile of wrong answers for you, only to deliver the wrong answer. It's getting pretty deep to get to the right answer, if you don't already have a good idea where the right answer should be in the first place. In high school, as part of one of my classes, they brought in a lady who worked HR for some recruiting firm for a few days to teach us how to do resumes and cover letters and such, and she told us even if a place has an option to apply online, always go in person and pick up an application. No one takes online applications seriously. I was actually told this by a seasoned, experienced older employee around 2011 or so while working a temporary position and seeking to apply for a permanent one, which by the way included the possibility of a pension. I carefully filled out a thick application stack by hand and delivered it personally to HR. Turns out that due to some recently added rule, I was not eligible unless I went through the online application process, and no one told me until it was too late. It was probably better for my mental health in the long run to leave that job rather than feeling like I had to stay for the benefits, but the whole experience really soured me on trusting anyone's advice on anything ever. Always verify from the relevant source. I was told in high school that by the time I graduated there wouldn't be any computer jobs left, so I should study something else. Nobody gave me this advice, but my amazing critical thinking skills and intuition told me this exact thing when I was selecting my major some 15 years ago. I've given up critical thinking ever since. I think it's because everyone we talked to wanted to do it. The thing is, a lot of those people realized they weren't smart enough to do it or didn't bother trying to do it. Lol, we all fucking tricked each other out of good jobs. Had a couple 17-year-olds come in asking for a manager and an application. I explained it's all online and the manager will say the same. They rolled their eyes, and in a condescending tone said, "We prefer in person, it's better." Okay, kid. We haven't had physical applications in over 10 plus years. For my current job, I tracked down the GM's email address and sent him my resume and a little introductory letter. He called me up a week later and hired me soon after. That's the closest I've ever come to walking in and shaking hands in person. Usually I use Indeed. To this day, my mom believes the way to apply for any job is to walk in and hand your future boss your paper resume. Whether or not they're actively hiring. She's not even 60 yet, but calls anyone who applies online a lazy piece of shit, and she doesn't believe I have an actual job because I work from home. She just hates computers. Edit, I guess some people like sorting by new, Lamau. I don't live anywhere near my mom. We don't get along, but if we did live close she would absolutely assume I'm available all day long. No, I don't know why she hates technology. She thinks it's all a scam. She's the person that would call IT support asking where the any key is. My job is entirely tech-based, and we only meet in person to run inventory quarterly, but she's 1000% under the assumption I work in a diner because that's the family legacy, I guess. Or maybe because I just love diners, so she assumes I work there? I'm uncertain. My dad used to think this, then I applied for his job and showed him all the steps. All he had to do was show up on time and promise not to be a terrorist, didn't even need a suit. The application I took was about 6 pages of writing, a long waiting list, multiple interviews, and a 6-month application ban if they do not say yes. My dad was constantly sending me jobs at his company that I was not qualified for. I finally applied for one that was actually in my field, and he was shocked to find out that his recommendation meant nothing and that they didn't even have the budget to hire someone after doing 2 interviews. It's so fucked up to call someone in for 2 interviews when you know you don't have the budget for a role. What are the odds they got forgiven PPP loans? I got promoted at my municipal job, but they were still required to officially open the position up and conduct interviews. I felt so bad because everyone involved except the people applying/being interviewed knew that the job was already taken. It's cruel, and I'd bet lots of us have been put through it without realizing it. In Sweden we call those shoe size listings, very common in government. Our constitution demands that only objective criteria are considered when deciding who gets a government job, so whenever there's a preferred candidate, the ad is tailored to require their individual skill set and characteristics. On more than one occasion, I've been asked to write the ad for the job that I'm supposed to apply to, so I can make sure that it specifically targets things that only I can do. As you say, it's cruel to the other applicants, but it's also a tremendous waste of time and resources for the organization, and hence the taxpayers. They're going to end up with the exact same result anyway, but with extra administrative steps in between. My grandpa did some similar shit. Kept trying to convince me to apply to be an electrician. Kept saying that all I had to do was talk to his friend, 80 plus years old, and I'll get in the union. Zero training or experience under my belt. Meanwhile, I actually go look up the training program for electricians in my county. It's like a 5-year program, tons of classes you have to take, a certain number of hours you have to do certain tasks, Edit, forgot to add that when I tried explaining this to him, he called me lazy and said, "So you just don't want to do it." Yeah, it's frustrating. My dad also has this mentality of put on a suit, walk into the business, ask to speak with the manager, give him a firm handshake, look him in the eye, and ask for a job. You forgot the part where you take the now hiring sign off the window because you're so confident you'll get the job that they don't need it anymore. Take the now hiring sign off the window and confidently hand it to the manager. Manager, wait, I'm confused, are you offering me a job now? I still have plenty of friends my age who act like my job isn't anything because it is from home on a computer. Pays my bills, nothing else matters than that. My husband and I are self-employed. A lot of people have this attitude like, when are you going to get a real job? Or straight up ask something along those lines. But any real job that would hire us is going to be more hours for less pay. If you aren't under someone's heel, are you even working? It's only a real job if you're sufficiently separated from the means of production. My dad still thinks because I work from home some days I have infinite time to do everything. Once requested me to get his meds from the hospital. Which was like an hour's travel, not to mention the waiting time to collect and make payments. He gets it delivered now. What are your thoughts? It was surreal watching my ex transition to work from home. She would have me come over and sit with her at the beginning because she is one of those people who doesn't do well being alone. Her whole family suddenly acted like she had all of the time in the world. Dropping by randomly to invite her to go do stuff, calling all of the time wanting to chat, asking her to go run errands, etc. All of this even after she stressed to them repeatedly that she was still on the clock through her company's system and she couldn't do any of that shit. Her whole day was taken up with phone calls and Zoom meetings, yet her family just couldn't accept that she was actually working. Some people are just so old school that to them not going into a brick and mortar business to work means you aren't really working at all. She would occasionally break down in tears from being so overwhelmed. She was one of the rare examples of somebody who definitely needed to go back to work at the office. I've worked nights for 25 years and have the same problem. People just seem to think I'm off all day. Doesn't seem to compute with them that I have to sleep sometime, or that my 1 p.m. is like their 1 a.m. She's not even 60 yet. Computers have been out her whole life. Personal computers have been around for more than half her life. She's just being ignorant at this point. Calls anyone who applies online a lazy piece of shit. It's much harder to jump through all the differing hoops of online application at places than it is to just hand a resume to someone, so I think she's got the wrong idea of lazy. I think some people still hear online and assume it always means easy, like you click 2 buttons and boom, application sent. Online applications have certainly become streamlined in some cases, but if you're not tailoring your CV and cover letter to each job, your chances are going to be much lower. And as you mentioned, a lot of companies have infuriating hoop jumping to apply for their jobs. Just for fun, take your mom with you in the car, ask for a paper application, and then walk back in the car and tell her the inevitable, "They want me to apply online." I had to do that once. Took a couple tries, but eventually my parents realized that applying to jobs 20 plus years ago and applying for jobs today is wildly different. Also lol. Online applications are always like upload a CV and will auto-populate the application. Auto-populates incorrectly in every field, so you have to fill it in manually anyway. Yeah, lazy stuff. I work in HR and I hate the awkward dance of taking the resume in person when we aren't actively hiring. It's a waste of everyone's time. Me being interrupted from my day, the person spending the time to come in. All to then have their resume sit in a pile that may never be used if a position doesn't open, and if one does, likely the resumes that were brought in person months ago are no longer looking for work, Which leads to more time wasting, me calling them and then interrupting in their day to just tell me they aren't looking for anything. Online application to actual posted job is the way to go now. Do we have the same mom? She got furloughed during COVID and would call me at least once a week wanting to go do something because she was so bored, and just could not comprehend that I was working full time from home. Even after she went back, she will ask if I can run errands for her during the workday because she's at work and apparently I'm not. Still WFH full time. If you like the video, hit that subscribe button for more content. I post every day and I'll see you next time with more stories.